voice is audible, I believe. So let's start with the second lecture of Democratic Politics 2. Now, as I discussed in the previous class, that we are going to cover this NCERTs in 3 days. So yesterday we covered power sharing and federalism. Today I'll be discussing about democracy. So there are 3 chapters in democracy I have taken together. One is democracy and diversity, outcomes of democracy, and challenges to democracy. So we'll be covering these 3 chapters. The other 3 chapters will be covered, that is day after tomorrow, that is on Thursday. So let's understand this topic and what exactly this idea of democracy means and how this democracy concept has evolved. Now we discussed about the idea of democracy, what democracy means, how democracy has evolved. That we discussed in the previous, you can say, the NCERTs. Now here we are discussing about democracy and diversity, because every country, when you try to bring democracy in a nation, there are problems, and let's try to understand. So there are certain diversity in any country. For example, India has diversity in terms of caste, in terms of language, in terms of religion, in terms of cultural practices. So that diversity is there. And then there are some ethnic groups or cultural groups across India, not one, maybe hundreds of them in India. And these ethnic groups and cultures, they are divided also. They have their own practices, they have their own belief system. Some are in majority, other are in minority. Now in majority, so for example, in state one, let's say state one, there are two communities are there. So community one is almost 60%, and community two is maybe 40%. Let's take an example of Punjab. In Punjab, the Sikh population is in majority, but Hindu population and other population is in minority. If I talk about on religion lines. So what do we see here? So there's a diversity, and when there is a diversity, how do we reconcile the democracy? How do we bring the democracy here? Because we have found that whenever there is a diversity in terms of division, in terms of social practices, that will have a share of problems, and that has to be discussed. Yesterday we discussed about how power sharing is important in a democracy, and today we'll discuss about how do we reconcile the idea of diversity with democracy. In a democracy and you can say diversity have to go together, because most of the modern nations that have developed so far, we can understand on a very basic level that all these countries were developed on the lines of having commonality. But when there is a diversity, which means कि country में बहुत सारे religious groups हैं, ethnic groups हैं, and hence it has to be there. Now this NCERT started with a very small story of Mexico Olympics, and here the winners, the two winners, the first and the second runner-up, both of them belong to America, and they were from black community, or we can say they were African Americans, to be precise. Now they won the 200-meter race of 1968 Olympics, and what they did exactly, when they were on the podium, they clenched their fist up raised and heads bowed, and they were not wearing any slippers. With them, there was a third candidate called US. Now, both of them were US candidate, that is Tommy Smith and John Carlos. The third candidate was also, kind of showed solidarity with them. Now, what happened? What exactly these people did? They, stood on the podium, on the dais of the winning dais, and they were wearing black socks with no shoes, and they represented the idea of, black poverty. Because in USA around that time, we can say the racial discrimination was very much prevalent. So even though they won for their country, they showed that there are certain problems in my country, and they tried to show the maybe they were harbingers of the civil rights movement. During this was also a period where civil rights movement was at its peak. In fact, 1960s was a period when Martin Luther King Jr. and Panthers movement and many other movements happened in USA. So around this time, racial discrimination was something that was questioned there by the minority community. Now here with this gesture, they try to draw international attention to racial discrimination in US. The black gloved and raised clenched fist were meant to symbolize black power. So that is what they tried to show, and so when they did, naturally There were criticism across the world because they did something that they were not supposed to do. And when uh, when they did something that were not supposed to do, that led to a situation where their medals were taken back, and all those things happened later on. But that is not important. What is important here is that they identified with a movement and they were able to show this. Civil rights movement was the period, you can see the same period, and now this was a period when it was led by Martin Luther King Jr., and it talked about Gandhian principle on non-violent methods, civil disobedience methods, and eventually later on Black Power came, which were ready to use the even violence here. Now the idea behind the entire movement, which continued for decades, the Black movement, was a struggle against social justice that has been historically practiced since centuries. Even though it became the modern democracy, but still segregation was there. In restaurant, you'll find the people, black and white people, have a different place of sitting. There was no entry to good university education. Reservation was also, all these things were there. Even though civil war, which happened during Abraham Lincoln time, the slavery was abolished, but discrimination was still there. And that is where the civil rights movement was very important. And today you can say with certainty that that right had changed the entire discourse of discussion in America. The blacks are getting reservation, the blacks get help, but even today we can see with certainty that black people are the most underprivileged people in the country. So civil rights movement was one of the movement which is in the most you can say oldest democracy in the world, and that is how they showed the racism, they showed discrimination which happened. So it's a social injustice. Now coming to no, if you draw similarities of the diversity, yesterday we discussed about, in Belgium we had majorly two groups, the French as well as Dutch. In Sri Lanka there were the language diversity as well as the religious diversity. So that means there was social diversity which happened in society. So within society we have groups. The social groups have been formed on certain lines. Now what is the origin of these social differences that we have? You are born in your family, that is a luck. You could have born in a poor family, or you could have born in a very rich family. Probably you won't have to worry about day to day life and preparing for UPSC. Or it is mere pure, and birth is purely accidental, it's by birth. And here many a times when you're born, you also belong to a certain social group, you belong to a certain social community, and that is how there are certain things that you can do and certain things you cannot do. Many a times you are born in a religious family, many a times you are born in an atheist family. So children who are born in a religious family, suddenly most of them you'll find they are deeply religious, they'll follow rituals. Then if you're born in a family where your parents are leftist, you know, you will start believing in leftist idea because that is how it has been groomed in them. But eventually, over a period of time, you might develop your own personality. Now, the point I want to make here is that many a times it is about the way you are groomed and conditioned, the way the socialization happens. Secondly, also we tend to take choices when we big when we are when you are elder or when we grow. So today you are mature enough to decide what is right and what is wrong. At the same time you are also influenced by the culture and language or the religious or maybe any kind of practices that you have seen in your family. So that is how the idea of social differences arises right from the beginning. But remember, can we say this social difference leads to social division? Because division is a negative word. Social difference is a normal thing which is there in every society. But can we say with this social differences or these differences can lead to division? Yes. If if maybe if you find that social differences are in such a manner where you might you're not okay with people who have other social maybe aspect, and the division becomes very natural. The difference is something which is acceptable, everybody is okay. But जब वो social difference एक division में create हो जाता है, then there is a problem. And then these division take political forms, they take political forms, and that is how these social division leads to political division. So today, if I talk about in India, itna to nahi hai, but we have political divisions. We have people who believe in the left, ideology, the people who believe in the right-based ideology, and the people there are centrists who support Congress. Right-based is BJP, left-based is of course CPI. Now you tend to believe all these things, and that is how you decide your political maybe decision. many people might not align with anybody. They just look at whose policy are better, whose leader is better, and they might go and vote. Again, it depends on how you decide. So people belonging to different social groups, the different social groups, they have differences as well as similarities across the boundaries. Many a times we cannot define the social boundary, but mostly it is there. Many a times there is overlapping. Okay, so there are overlapping and cross-cutting differences. For example, you have a religion, okay, and that religion is Christianity. In Christianity, we have multiple sects. So we have Catholics and we have Protestant. Now, Catholics and Protestant are at loggerhead. In fact, the Protestant religion was born out of opposition to Catholic religion. Okay, so Protestant religion is called religion of protest. So within Christianity, the Protestant religion was born. Now, in a country, for example, in Ireland, you'll find that most of the people who are poor, they belong to Catholic group. Protestants are relatively less poor. Now, that is an example I'm giving you. So now here you identify, maybe you belong to a lower income group and you identify with the religion. Similarly, if I talk about India, so you belong to a lower income group, and mostly the lower income group are from SC and ST categories. We cannot say with certainty, but this is one of the aspects is there. People who are mostly who are below poverty line, they belong to maybe SC, ST or OBCs. Again, I'm not saying that people from upper caste cannot be poor. They can be poor also, but you will find that there's a predominance in terms of numbers is more. So you tend to identify. So there is a social differences. Now here, the division. Now here the division becomes stark, and that overlaps with other differences. Many a times it will, many times it will not. So social division will take place when there is some social difference and they might overlap with other so एक social difference पहले आता है, and that social difference will lead to social division. For example, in India, Dalits are poor and landless, so that is a sad thing. You will rarely find a Dalit person having a huge tracts of land, having doing a farming on 25 acre of land. That is practically impossible in India. Maybe due to some reason, Dalit might have had one Dalit or one entrepreneur or one big businessman of Dalit might have acquired land or might have earned business, earned money, and then probably. But that is maybe one case. Okay, so mostly we can say Dalit, and because they are poor and landless, so we discuss they are socially excluded. In economics, we discuss that there is a social exclusion of these people. Not only social exclusion, they are more vulnerable and they have fewer life chances, and that further leads to ability where they are discriminated and there are injustice also. People who are relatively rich or powerful, they do not face such discrimination in general, but these people face it. Now, can we say that it is a social difference? Yes, there is a social difference between people who are Dalits and people who are non-Dalits, and at the same time, these Dalit, they belong or they find themselves, identify themselves with a social, you can say division, and that social division again becomes a political division. So you would find that mostly Dalit people, they vote to a certain political party. In UP, you will find Dalit vote, Bahujan Samaj Party, BSP. In Maharashtra, you might find that they might align with RPI, Republican Party of India. In other parts of India, they might vote Congress more. In Delhi, they voted for Aam Aadmi Party. So the point I want to make here is that the political social division, social difference, then social division, and then that kind of leads to political division. But again, the question here is that when all these things happen, the social division, when it leads to political division, when this social division, when it leads to political division, can we say this political division is disruptive? Does it strengthen the democracy, or does it destabilize the democracy? And if it destabilizes the democracy, what is the way forward? Because we have seen countries in the world that this social division, eventually political division, has led to maybe breakdown of country. Yugoslavia broke into 6 parts. Okay, so social division is of course based on you belong to a certain ethnic group or religion or culture or belief system. So we see that social divisions are created, and here your social difference or your traits are something that you identify with, and you find similarity of your trait with somebody else, and hence you find that acha hum log ek jaise hi hai, and that is how you tend to belong to a community, and a kind of social consciousness also develops. कई बार ऐसा भी होता है that people might identify with your social division and they also feel a part of yourself. For example, a lot of people who believe in left ideology, they support Dalits. They fight for the cause of Dalit. They empathize with Dalit. Okay, so that that can also be there. So we can say that in this situation, if I say social division are created, when one kind of social difference becomes more important than the other, people start feeling that they belong to different communities. Now your Dalit, you being Dalit becomes so important that everything rest, everything rest becomes secondary. Okay, so we have Dalit thinkers, we have Dalit writers, we have people who believe in Dalit ideology. They there is a whole Dalit literature that is being created by leaders. Now they are free to create that, nothing wrong in that. They tell that, see, it is equivalent to apartheid, it is equivalent to racism in America. So we are not different, we are India also, we are facing such problems. So the point I want to make here is that now the question here is that these are realities. Tomorrow you might become a district, you'll become a district magistrate. You might go, you become an assistant commissioner. You might become, and then you become, you go into administration and you find such situation. You become a IPS officer or IAS officer, and suddenly you find that in your place, in your town, in your city, you find that people are discriminated on these lines. Now, how do you reconcile that? How you are able to find that? इसको resolve कैसे करोगे? What should be your approach in handling such situations? So the question here is that, and for that you need to act in a mature manner. Now the entire focus here with that, how this social differences, which is based on certain diversity, will impact democracy. Will it strengthen the democracy? Will it weaken the democracy? If it can strengthen, what are the ways it can strengthen? If it can weaken, what are the ways it can weaken? And we have to find a solution to this problem. So we discuss about overlapping and cross-cutting differences. Now the countries could be small or countries could be big, but you find that all the West nations, mostly the West nations, these West nations have been mostly homogeneous, because West nations were identified on one culture. Okay, so Germans, Germans live in Germany, Brits live in Britain, Irish live in Ireland, Scottish live in Scotland, and that is how. So, but in past 100 years, 70 years, 80 years, a lot of new changes are happening. In Belgium, we discussed just now. Why we discussed that Belgium had two kind of population. One was the French and the Dutch. Yesterday we discussed. But today, go and see Belgium. Just write Belgium on Wikipedia and just check. You will find that Belgium has a significant Muslim population also today. The point I want to make here is that similarly, you go to UK, you'll find significant Hindu population there, Pakistani population also there. You go to USA, you'll find you'll find Asian population, because they say Asian. India, South Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan. For them, everybody is equal. Okay. Now the point I want to make here is that all these countries were probably homogeneous, except USA. All these countries were homogeneous. They had mostly one kind of population. But when dynamics changed, the influx started happening, globalization started happening. People started moving from different parts of the world, to this part, and today we see that almost all the countries are multicultural. Now, can we say with certainty that these people who are moving to different country with their cultural or religious identification, or religion and cultural aspect, can we say with certainty that they will live there properly? Or can we say that if there is a rule in that country which supports the majority or the white people there, can they live properly there? Probably not. And that is where we have found that when they go there, migrants, they develop their own culture, they make a different social community. Then, so in America, we have Asian Africans, we have Indian Americans, we have African Americans, we have Italian American, we have French American, and that is a kind of new nomenclature is coming. So you tend to, when you when you go and contest elections in there in USA, you try to woo every group. So Donald Trump, celebrates Diwali because he wants to, get the votes of Hindu community there. Donald Trump, maybe go and talk to, influence the Jew population there, because he knows that Jew population practically control, America's finance. So there is a diversity there in the country which is already there. Now the question is that, now this is an example where diversity is surviving and democracy is thriving. But we have other examples as well. So this chapter is basically making an inquiry that when there is a diversity, what is the impact of diversity on democracy? If there are political divisions, if there are social divisions, how does it impact? because India also we say face such problem. So what should be way forward? When you find that somebody has a problem with India, when when a Kashmiri individual has say something bad about India, you feel very bad, and you tend to how dare he said something about my India, you feel bad. But I, as a student of political science, maybe I would suggest that rather than you questioning that person, you should ask that why this question or this feeling has developed, because that person is Indian as per our constitution, and if that person is feeling bad, or if this person has a problem, whatever reason, maybe he has been given a wrong information, maybe in the inculcation of that idea of India has been wrong in him or her. So what do we do there? Can we force ourselves? Can we force ourselves? Can we make a rule that anybody who says something or does something should be put behind bar? Or can we say that whosoever does not conform to the idea of India that you are thinking, should we put them behind bar? Because that is a common feeling that might come to each one of us. So as a common feeling aayega, and when this common feeling comes, then what do you do? And for that you need to understand that democracy is not about similarity. It is more about differences. It is more about reconciling. It is more about finding a common ground. If not common ground, identifying, or even if the common ground is found, we all are humans. That itself is a common ground, right? So humanity, the ideals of humanity should prosper. That is what is needed. So this chapter is basically looking at those elements. So politics and social division, are they related? Definitely they are related. Can this social division, which is based on social difference, lead to political division? And this political division, is it harming the country's growth? Is it harming the maybe political situation, or is it creating a divide in society? Or it is actually we are able to find a way out of it? So they are definitely related, first of all. Now, what happens? Politics of social division. So in India, we have social division on language, on culture, on maybe caste, and there is a competition then. So you belong to a certain political party and you contest election. Slowly, unknowingly, even if you don't believe in these things, suddenly your caste, your your religion, or your caste at least, or maybe you belong to a certain place will come into picture. In fact, you are given ticket based on those lines. You'll find that in a area where you'll find a in a constituency, if I find a certain cultural group is more, you'll find that the chances of person getting ticket from a political party will be more from that cultural group, because that is how it happens, because people tend to identify with the division we have. So you belong to Karnataka, you belong to Maharashtra, and you meet somebody from Maharashtra, you'll feel very okay because you have a common culture. So democracy, when the division happens, and parallelly the democracy is also there, and there is a competition among various political parties, they tend to identify with these. In fact, many political parties are based on them. So we have a Bahujan Samaj Party which started with Dalit movement. Similarly, we have a political party which focused on certain aspect, on a caste aspect. So in UP or in Bihar, leaders like Lalu or Mulayam Singh Yadav, or if you go in, there is a one vocal legal leader. So we have SD Kumaraswamy, he's a vocal legal leader. Then we have BSY Yadurappa, he is a Lingayat leader. So because they have their maybe certain cultural or maybe social trait, which people identify with that, and this tend to divide the society. You start vote on those lines. They start competing in terms of division. This social division becomes a political division that might lead to conflict, and that might lead to violence, that might lead to disintegration in extreme cases. Now we are talking about extreme cases. India, fortunately, we have not faced such problem, though in India differences are always there, the problems are always there, but differences are not that stark. So let's try and understand what has happened. So what should be an ideal situation? Ideally, politics should be not linked with religion, race, caste, or communal lines. In fact, Supreme Court has given a judgment that if a political party, if any person from a certain political party is found using these identity, that is religion or your caste or this thing, to woo votes or to get votes, then that person might be debarred from the election. Now it looks very simple. because politicians are way too smart. They use a trick mechanism, they use proxy mechanism so that they tend to influence the voters. So these division will definitely change into political lines, and that is not good for the country. Now, what are the outcomes? So politics of social division, first is, if I talk about one country, Yugoslavia, they had multiple ethnic group, and that ethnic group eventually led to disintegration into six different countries. But can we say that in India, these social division can also create something like that? So one thing is that they should not be expressed in politics. Do not link with politics with your division. But it does not happen because automatically you tend to identify. You feel I belong to certain social group and exploited, and hence the only way to put my exploitation or tell my exploitation or change that situation will be by getting political power. So you tend to become more important. So in India, reservation. I'm not going into the merits and demerits of reservation. So we have reservation for SC, we have reservation for ST, we have reservation for OBC. Now they all have reservations, out of which SC, ST have a maybe more protection in terms of reservation. There is a concept of creamy layer in OBC, which is not there SC, ST. Now, can we say that this reservation this reservation makes sense? But can we say the present reservation is okay? Because politics happen on these lines, and these reservation are the base of reservation is maybe social, because what exactly reservation? They said that social and economically backward, SCBC, socially and economically backward caste. So this is the basis of reservation. You should be socially backward. You should be educationally backward, not economically, educationally. So in India, the base of reservation is SCBC, that is socially and economically backward caste. So these people, SC, ST, OBC, they all belong to that category. And so now they get reservation, and when there is a reservation, there is a problem. Now, if you try to look it from their other point of view, should the reservation be there? Definitely there should be reservation, because reservation will ensure that these people also get identified, or these people also get representation in the government or in political system, which so far has not been there. Unka representation current level pe skewed hai, and hence that skewedness have to be improved. So such things will also always be there. So what are the range of these outcomes? What will happen? Not every expression of social division will lead to disasters. For example, in India, we have reconciled. Many times the social division will be there. It will be reflected in politics. That will be there. But how will you able to handle that? How political parties understand that? How mature you are? Now you tend to vote a political party and want to win the leader of that political party be in power. But when the idea of when India, when the question of India comes in, everything secondary for you, because then you tend to see no, because you have multiple identities. You tend to believe I belong to social group, I am exploited, that is okay. But now we're talking about country, and here these division or these should not matter here, because now it is about maybe ensuring that country survives. So in a democracy, it is very natural that political parties will take a use of that. Social division will affect voting in the countries. People from one community tend to prefer some party more than others. In many countries, there are parties that focus only on one community. But can we say it lead to disintegration? No. In India, we have diverse country, but we are unified by the sense of being an Indian. अभी जब election होता है तो you might tend to vote one political party because of your social group. In UP, if you find that you have so many castes in UP, and you'll find every caste is related to a certain political party. Okay. Now there are three scenarios. क्या होता है इसमें? When such situation happens, what is there? The first scenario is a situation where how people perceive their identity. If they feel that their identity is singular and exclusive, it is a difficult. उनको अगर ऐसा लगता है कि उनकी जो identity है, that cannot maybe live in that country, then there is a problem. Accommodation becomes very difficult. So first scenario is a situation where these people who belong to a certain social group, they do not want to live there. For example, what happened in Yugoslavia, eventually that led to division in the country. The second country is how well political leaders raise the demand of any community. So when you tend to say that these people need to be given reservation, how you're able to do that? You are able to maybe bring mechanism, or you're able to highlight the problems, and you make people believe, see, there is a problem. Okay. So it is easier to accommodate demands that are within the constitutional framework and are not at the cost of another community. So when we try to give reservation, so in 1950, 1992, when the reservation was 50% more than when the reservation came in, the OBC reservation that was in 1989, the reservation was around 50%. So in when it was around 50%, then a Indira Sani judgment came, and this Indira Sani judgment 1992 said that there is a cap on reservation. Reservation cannot go beyond 50%. Reservation on what basis? On SE basis, socially and educationally backward caste people. They cannot, you know, they cannot. You can say, the reservation cannot cross this limit. But later on, we added 10% more reservation based on economic criteria. Now these people who belong to 50%, they do not feel threatened because they know that unka jo number hai, that will not change. So these people are not getting reservation on our cost, but the numbers which are already there, उन्हीं में से उनको मिलेगा. Yes, the rest 40% is for general population, and they feel उनको बुरा लग रहा है. But they know that maybe this 10% makes sense because they believe that the reservation in the country, especially should be on economic lines as well. Now, point here is that I'm not saying that whether it is good or it is bad or whatever it is, but what I'm trying to mention here is that we are just trying to find a way out, to the problem that we are facing in India. So, in the second situation, we can say we are able to find, we are able to accommodate. If somebody wants to say that I want to, create a new state, why and what is the base of creation of a new state? On the base of certain ethnic group. Now, we'll see that do we have a provision in the constitution? Can we create a provision in the constitution? If it is not possible in the current constitutional framework, we will not be able to do that. So in Nagaland, you must be knowing that Naga crisis happened in 1950s, and they wanted to break away from India. They wanted to leave India. They said that we want to create a new sovereign country of Nagalim. And when they said, India said, see, this is not possible. Nehru, he was so democratic, but he said, see, whatever you want, entry to India is a one-way route. You became a part of India, now you cannot leave India. Whatever you want, you tell me, we will provide that within our constitutional framework, but you cannot have a right to self-determination. That is not possible. We'll try, we'll sit down, resolve, and eventually over a period of 50s, 60s, 70s, we were able to solve the problems at all levels. Today, the Naga problem is very, the problem, is almost resolved. Yes, the problem still remains, but it is almost resolved more than what you have expected. So here we are trying. So we are trying to follow an accommodative politics. The third is how government reacts to demand of different groups. If the government can accommodate the demand of minorities, then social division becomes less threatening. So in India, we have minority community. Now, minority can be based on linguistic basis, or it could be based on the religious basis. If they have a certain demand, if you are able to accommodate those demands, again they might be asking 10, but you might be able to give 2, 3. But there, at least we are able to accommodate at some level. But if you say no, let's suppress it in the name of national unity, in the name of no, that is not possible. When we created, states based on languages, don't you think we identified the concept of language-based state? We did. हमने linguistic states बनाए, the states based on languages, and that strengthened the idea of India. So you have multiple identity. You are Indian, and you belong to a certain state. In fact, I go further. You belong to a certain city. You belong to a certain, taluka. You belong to a certain village. So you have multiple identities, and that is okay with you. Nothing wrong in that. Okay. So that is how. So forced integration is not important, not needed. We have to find a meeting ground, and government knows this. The people who understand democracy knows that. The only way is that we have to find a meeting ground. Try to, because everybody is will try to find solution. Nobody is want to fight unless until you push them to the wall. Then only those people will fight. So the only this politics of social division can be solved by accommodating, by creating mechanism. But again, the mechanism can have a certain degree of limitation. For example, in India, we can say that hum aapko kuch denge, so that will be within the constitutional bounds. So assertion of social diversity in Indian country need not to be seen as a social danger. In fact, हम लोग जितना diversity को recognize करते हैं, that is how we strengthen the country. So accommodation is the way forward. So we accommodate social diversity, disadvantaged people, marginal social group, और इनके लिए हम कुछ करेंगे, क्या करेंगे? We'll try to help them express the grievances. We try to resolve the grievances. We try to attend them. We create government scheme mechanism so that these grievances can be addressed. So that is what is important in a democracy. Okay, so that completes chapter number 1, democracy and diversity. It's a very small chapter. You can read it. Almost 10, 12 pages chapter is there. This question is not giving much of a solution, but this question is only questioning. It is developing inquiry, because suddenly you'll find the chapter has ended. But the objective of this chapter is that it is a kind of putting a question in your mind. आपके दिमाग में सवाल बना रहा है. It is trying to make you tell you that these are problems, because tomorrow when you become a leader or when you become an administrator, you cannot force your way always. You have to find a meeting ground. You have to find a way in which people issues are addressed. As a leader, you need to understand India. As a person who's knowledgeable, need to understand the differences in India. And democracy is the way forward. Democracy not only means that you go vote and find a government. Democracy means you conform to these ideas also. Democracy means that you tend to understand people's differences. Democracy means that you respect other people's privacy, you respect other people's liberty, and you ensure the dignity is given to you, and you also pass on the dignity to others. So that is what real democracy means. So we have to work at all levels. So that completes democracy and diversity. This chapter is I would expect you to read this chapter in a very thorough manner and think on these. Just look around you. Just try to find, if you belong to a village, just see, try to link, can you link with the village? If you have a little understanding in politics of India, you will definitely understand this chapter much better. Okay, now coming to outcome of democracy. So ninth class NCERT chapter 1 to all was of democracy. But what is the outcome of democracy? How should we assess? Is democracy good in India? Is democracy able to find problems? Is democracy healthy in India? Is democracy a solution to problems in India? Can we say with certainty that democracy has worked well for India? What kind of problem we are facing in a democracy? So in India, if I say there's a democracy, there's a demand for so many people. There is a demand against a demand for a creation of a new state. There is a demand for maybe redressal of grievances of certain social group. There is a demand for women reservation. There is a demand for this reservation, that reservation. There is a demand for a special package of certain area which is not so developed. So how do we understand, how we assess the democracy? Democracy अच्छा चल रहा है, कैसे हम assess करेंगे? And for that we have to find certain points. So here democracy is better. Why it is better? We discuss this part in the 9th NCERT, because it promotes equality, it gives dignity to everybody. The decision making is collective and hence the quality is more. It provides method to resolve conflict, because in a democracy you have to find a meeting ground. It also, people make mistake, but it also gives you a scope to resolve the mistakes. So these are the points that we discussed. Now let's take it forward. Now democracy looks very good in principle, but can we say that it is ground practice में भी हो रहा है? How can we find ways in which democracy works in India? Do we prefer democracy only for moral reason because ऐसा होना चाहिए, or there is some strong solid reason also to understand democracy? आपके हिसाब से डेमोक्रेसी इंडिया में जो चल रही है, where you elect government at local level, at state level, at national level, and of course what government is doing through their governance, okay? So जो भी ये सारा पूरा process जो चल रहा है, these are the outcome of democracy. Again, people are looking at this process. People are participant also here, but people are receivers also here. In fact, the power of the democracy comes from people. So whosoever are these people, जो लोग भी ये लोग involved हैं यहाँ पे, how well they are able to understand people's need. So that will decide the outcome of democracy. So what are the outcome? We expect accountable, responsive, and legitimate government. Tomorrow you'll get into administration. The first thing you'll be told about a rule of transparency, accountability, responsibility. So you have to be responsible, you have to be accountable for your actions, for your team members' action, and you have to act in a very fair, unbiased, and transparent manner. You become a DM of a city, and a small incident happens in your city. Okay, incident happen, a small maybe riot start happening in the city. So you'll be asked, because you are the leader. and the CM will call you, and maybe you're sleeping at home, and then suddenly you get a call from CM's office. I said, what happened? Sir, I'm from CM's office. CM wants to talk to you, and suddenly you are out of your bed, you're jumping around. Yes, sir. I said, there's a riot has happened. What are you doing? You're not able to handle it. You are accountable. You are responsible. So that is how we. So government is, people will expect that such a responsibility, is, so basically here government is making themselves accountable for whatever they are doing, whether good or bad. Whatever the recent, अभी आप देख रहे होगे जो कोविड रिस्पांस चल रहा है गवर्नमेंट का, COVID-19 response. So we have state government, we have central government, we have local bodies, we have municipalities in Mumbai, in Delhi, in bigger cities. So how well we are able to do that? Are they accountable? There are opposition people who are questioning government's response. Why migrants labor say aap log fees, taking train, you're taking the fare for train. What are you doing for migrant laborers? What are you doing for middle class? What are you doing for MSME? What are you doing for people whose business might go bust? What are you doing for students who are sitting at home and wants to study, who wants to give college examination? What about the aspirants of UPSC who've been preparing from past 1 year and suddenly they are in limbo? They don't know when the exam will happen. So here we expect accountable, responsive government, and the government is legitimate because you have accepted the government. You have given the your power to the government through your vote system. So that is the first thing, the accountability. Second is economic growth. Economic growth is very important. Economic growth means growth of the country's income and the development. What is development? Economic growth leading to development, where the benefits of the growth reaches the masses. That is what development says. Reduction of inequality and poverty. Can we say there is inequality? A good democracy will focus on resolving it. Accommodation of social diversity. How do you accommodate social group, their practices, their whatever they want? How do we give dignity and freedom to citizens? So you all are citizens of the country, and suddenly you feel, what dignity, what freedom are we getting? There's no dignity, there is no freedom. But suddenly you have taken things for way too granted, because if I take you to Syria, if I take you to Iraq, if I take you to Yemen, if I take you to probably Saudi Arabia or UAE, if I take you to Kuwait, and you are an Indian, and you find that you are discriminated based on your religion, you are discriminated because you belong to a certain part, you're not a native of that country, and then you realize the idea of dignity, then you realize what exactly the idea of freedom means. In 2011, what happened in 2011? In 2011, the entire, if I try to imagine the map of MENA, Middle East, North Africa, this was under Arab Spring, and it started from Tunisia, then it spread to many other countries, especially Egypt. The change of regime happened. Egypt was ruled by Hosni Mubarak, and when the Hosni Mubarak was ruling Egypt, and people started demanding democracy, because all these MENA are under dictatorships. So there are one rulers, who are who are dictators running the country from maybe hundreds, maybe almost since decades. Now those countries, now remember, all these countries are much better than India in comparison to socio-economic status. वहाँ पे average income is almost 3 to 4 times than an average Indian what is earning. People are relatively more economically prosperous, but there also economic disparity is very wide. So when the Arab Spring, it was pro-democracy, they were looking at the pro-democracy, and they wanted democracy should be brought in. There should be elections, and all these leaders who were ruling this country, they suppressed this movement. They were using force, brutality, and all these leaders who were ruling, dictators, they mostly were military dictators, military dictators. And when they ruled the country with iron fist, they ensured that there is no dissent allowed. They ensured that whatever government is doing, that is completely, they are working under secrecy. So then you realize the idea of democracy. Then you realize that suddenly that policeman walking around nearby you cannot do anything, or will do something against you only if you violate the law. There is absolutely rule of law there. There is no rule of law in these countries. So that was a problem. When Indian thinkers and all those people went there, and they became and they, so what those people asked? They asked that, can you tell me a way in which we can keep military out of politics? Because what was found that all these countries, military was involved in politics. Can we say something like this in India? I know a country, our neighbor, even Pakistan is similar to that. Can you imagine a situation where military marching on the road and saying now we'll do what we want to do? In India, military is under civilian government, and military says that that is the code of conduct that has been inculcated. That practice has been followed since decades, and it has become a part of routine. Not even a single military leader will think of taking a military coup. Do you think they can do that? Don't you think that they have a power? But that is not possible, because that is not how the leadership has evolved. That is every military person who is getting a training, he or she understand deep inside their mind that we have to serve under civilian government. We want respect, but we have to work under civilian government. Government also identifies that they are at the forefront. They are losing, they might lose their life. They might become martyrs. They're risking their life, and we identify that, and we are ready to help them as well, or maybe go extra mile to identify then what they're doing. But question here is that this is democracy. Now we are way too it looks way too simple. आपको लगता होगा अरे what is so bad about or good about it? Let's ask and go to the countries where there's a no due rule of law. You compare yourself with America, you compare yourself with West European nations. Yes, we should compare. Yes, government should be more responsive. Yes, government should ensure there should be more development. Yes, government should ensure that people should have job. Yes, government should ensure that economic growth is ensured, development is ensured, and government is trying. And but for that, we should also be thankful for things that we have. So the idea, democracy, the outcome of democracy should be working on these lines. If we are able to work on them, if you're able to find a satisfactory answers to these questions that I'm putting, we can see that democracy is doing well. But again, there's no absolute things, because we can say with certainty that even so-called the best democracy, the most developed democracy, developed nations are also facing problems on these lines. There is more inequality in those countries than in India. So there also they are trying to find a way out. Again, government is transparent or not. Today, COVID data is coming every day. So far, 1.1 million testing has been done in India, and around more than 40,000 numbers, 43,000 numbers have reached. Every day we are doing some 70,000 tests. Government is planning to increase it to 1 lakh, and then eventually maybe few lakhs a day. That is what government is targeting. So these numbers should be transparent. Opposition leaders asking, tell you whether there's a community spread has happened or not, and if it has happened, we need to know, because that is how we will ensure accountability. We'll ask you why it is not happening, why you people are not doing that. Just a while ago, PIB information came where we are producing personal protective equipments, and that is around 1.88 lakh per day we are producing. Earlier that 1.88 lakh per month we are producing. Earlier that number was way too less. So we are so when government tells these data to you, you feel okay, government is doing. It's not that we are sitting at home and government is doing nothing. They are doing everything from their end. Just a while ago, I was reading the newspaper, and government is trying to attract investment from outside, because government knows that we have limited fund. The only way is to attract investment from outside, and people in different countries, if they feel that India is able to handle this crisis better, so let's go to India. So government has almost earmarked lakhs of hectares of land which they want to promise to the companies. You want to come to India? Come, we'll give you land. We'll give you investment support. We'll give you electricity. We'll give you power supply. Every state is competing among themselves, because we know that is how we will be able to overcome this crisis, because we want jobs. Because jobs will not come from government side. The job will come from the private sector only. Okay, so we have to ask. Let's take one by one. Accountable, responsive, and legitimate government. So democracy produces a government which has to be responsive, and the responsibility should be towards citizens. In a democracy, we are concerned about ensuring that people will have the right to choose their rulers, and people will have a control over their rulers. Whenever possible and necessary, citizens should be able to participate in decision making that affects them all. So that should be the objective of a democracy. Accountable, responsible. That is the first few lessons that you learn when you go into administration. Now, democracy is based on the idea of deliberation, negotiation. The delay might happen because a lot of people feel that why India is growing so slow, why India is growing at 8%, why China is growing at or maybe 6-7% or 6%, why China is growing at 10%, why can't we grow like that? Why maybe government takes maybe almost 6 months to make a law if they decide, or maybe years to make a law, because there is a process, there's a parliamentary system, there's a deliberation, there's a discussion, there is a scrutiny mechanism of committee system, and then the law is passed. So at one end it might look maybe delay, but at the same time maybe that decision is not is not taken on a whims and fancies. There is a proper check and mechanism. So you might feel that democratic system might be inefficient because there's a delay, maybe things do not happen. But let's imagine a government that they take decisions very fast, but it may take decisions that are not accepted by people and maybe may have to face problems. In contrast, democratic government will take more time, follow procedures before arriving to the decision, because it has followed procedures. Its decision may be more acceptable to people and more effective. So the cost of time that democracy pays is perhaps worth it. It does not mean that we don't find a process in which we can streamline and we ensure that decisions are reached in a in a easier manner or maybe in a shorter span of time. हमेशा ऑब्जेक्टिव ये होना चाहिए कि गवर्नमेंट के डिसीजन अच्छे से हो और जल्दी हो, because that is how you will be able to ensure that democracy survives. Government is more efficient, because it is also about accountability. Okay, if you want some measures democracy on the basis of expected outcome, you would look at the following practices. Do we have regular free elections? अगर आपको देखना है कि democracy expected outcome काम कर रहा है, is there is an open public debate on major policies and legislation? Don't you think there are people, media, there are people outside government who are criticizing? Citizens' right to information about government and its functioning, transparency. So government will not only have to be accountable, they have to be transparent. So these are performance indicators on which democracy can be measured. But there are problems also, because many a times democracy is not able to meet the decisions of the people or not able to share information, and mostly it happens because government do not want to highlight their problems. If there is some problem or lacuna or gap, if you ask government will be defensive. They will try all the level best that information should not come in public, but eventually they should be coming. Most of the democracy in the world, they try to shield information. That is bad. That is the most important aspect, and that is where it is important that countries should thrive to develop a system. We should focus on institutional democracy. What is the meaning of institutional democracy? That means we have a institution in place which ensures that such things are followed by process, by rule. If government is not able to follow or make a meet a target, institutions should be created which can give information on that account, because that will put pressure. So the idea is to develop institutions, parliamentary institutions, in strengthening EC, election commission, finance commission, UPSC, CAG, and the list goes on. If these institutions function properly, the parliament will have legislative and executive, judiciary. If these institutions function properly, we can say the democracy can survive better. Okay, so we can see here democracy is preferred over dictatorship except Pakistan. So you can see here almost 70% people feel that democracy is preferable, though many people believe that dictatorship is better, maybe hardly 9%, and 20% people are non-political. They are least bothered about what is going in politics. They look at politicians or people involved in politics as people who are corrupt, but these are people who are running the country. These are people who are running the show. Okay, so we have to understand, if we say, let's take this doubt of suitability of democracy. So we can say in India, almost everybody believes that democracy is suitable. Maybe 8-10% feel that there should be dictatorship. And no, but that is not allowed. That cannot be allowed, because dictatorship will create new kind of problems. There is an overwhelming support of democracy. You can see in India, 96% people support democracy. That number is less in Pakistan because they have not witnessed proper democracy. A proper democracy will ensure that you understand the value of democracy. When you vote, inside deep in your mind, you have a certain leader you want to elect, and the leader performs, and then you go and vote to let that leader again. You feel that democracy has survived. Many times your leader might lose. You'll feel bad about it, but you say, okay, that's democracy. Every time it is possible that my leader might not win. Okay, so the best outcome of democracy is that it is a democracy, and we have discovered after this mental gymnastics. Okay, so democracy, that is the first thing. We have to develop democracy. Second is economic growth and development. So what is economic growth and development? Economic growth means growth of the income of the country. Development means the benefit of growth reaches the masses. So we can say the benefit of growth, if trickles down, then we can say development has happened. So in democracy, they are expected to produce good government. Then it is expected that they should produce development. Development means people should have what they want: education, health, food, security, job, freedom, liberty. Okay. So if we see all the democracies and dictatorship for the 50 years, we find that dictatorships have slightly higher rate of economic growth. उनकी economic growth ज़्यादा रही है. But we can, but still democracy is better, because democracy is not only about economic development, it is more than that. Democracy is about maybe freedom, liberty, justice, dignity. So on that record, on that account, democracy serves better. तो हम ये तो नहीं कह सकते democracy will definitely ensure economic development, but democracy puts a lot of pressure. If I took at least this diagram, don't you think that this is ये India में है, or can we say that this is true about almost all nations with varying degree? ठीक है ना? So rich, if I take 100 rupees as national income, so rich have, they are having 90 rupees or maybe 70 rupees of national income is with it. Middle class is maybe out of 70 with this, maybe 25 with this, and the poor have just 5. The poor are around 60% of, or maybe 70% of India's population. The rich are hardly 1% of India's population, so they have 70% of India's wealth. The middle class is probably 50, maybe 20-25% of the India's population. So they have 25% of the wealth. So what do we see here? That disparities in between rich and poor is there. If this is happening, which means there's no development. Economic growth to ho raha hai, but development is not as happening. So we have to ensure that how development happens. So let's talk about some diagrams here. If I talk about democracies, so the average growth of democracies has been 4%. We are talking about almost 50 years, almost 5 decades. Let's see this diagram. So in South Africa, top 20% have almost 65% of national wealth, and bottom 20% has just 3%. Similarly, USA, top 20% have 50% of wealth, bottom 20% is 4% of wealth. So that is very bad, right? Bottom 20% have just 4% of contribution in the national income. So this is a disparity, this is an inequality. So we can say there is growth has happened, but development has not happened. So we see here, you ask a small child in India, they don't have, or poor people, there's a problem of housing, healthcare, schooling, hunger. Okay, so you ask, so don't you think these should be there? Because if these are given, then only we can say development has happened. So development is a holistic process. It is about qualitative improvement of life of people. It is about enlargement of people's choices. It is about positive desired changes that you bring in society. That is development. So we want these kind of economic outcomes: enlargement of people's choices, positive desired, desired positive things that you want to bring. You want to ensure that people have basics in life, they are prosper. We don't mind rich people having wealth, but we want that even the poor people have good quality of life, dignity of life, respect, and access to basic resources. Okay, so witness that in most of the countries in India, we find a problems of inequality, we find a problem of poverty, and hence it is very much reasonable and expected that they should address the economic disparities. In India, the voice of the poor is limited. We have to reach out to poor. We have to create mechanism for poor. So democracy is based on political equality, but a real democracy is only when we are able to reach the political equality, beyond political equality, and bring economic equality. We bring social equality. So the day we are able to do that, we will be able to do that. We will be able to find a solution. So B.R. Ambedkar said in the first statement after the constitution was adopted that what we have given a political equality. But our country can survive only when there is a social and economic equality. But again, it is not possible to bring 100% equality. But again, we can ensure that the disparities are brought down, because this is a real problem even today. Government takes measures, government takes effort. So we have to ensure that so many ultra rich people who are there in India, unke paas sara wealth na jaye. There should be a mechanism where wealth should be distributed among the population, or the wealth is taken from these people in a very in a legitimate way, maybe through high taxation, or maybe through ensuring that whatever wealth they generate, that reaches the masses as well, through job creation, through growth of their company. But that's okay, but the job creation should also happen. So we have to ensure that people at the bottom level, they are able to get. So you can see here 50% people have just small part of the pie, and 2% of the population have almost the whole world's wealth. So this is true about the entire world. In fact, one of the failures of modern democracy that we discuss in India is that we have not done well on account of the development part. Some countries like Singapore, South Korea, they have done relatively better, or maybe Scandinavian nations, they have done relatively better. वहां पे inequality कम है, the disparities are less than what it was there. Accommodation of social diversity. No society can fully and permanently resolve conflicts among different groups. तो ये जो diversity है, इसको accommodate करना होगा. You have to find mechanism, you have to negotiate differences, you have to find the best way out. So somebody comes to you with a problem, you have to sit with them, you have to find a way out. Then only if you are able to do that. So you have to find an outcome to the problems of society. There are two conditions for the outcome. It is necessary that democracy is not simply ruled by majority opinion. Majority always need to work with the minority, so that government functions to represent the general view. Majority and minority opinions are not permanent. Now here we have to find out. It's not like you belong to a majority, so things should happen whatever majority says. Yes, majority will have a say, but minority should also be taken together. And that is where a majority should also give little space and allow minority views also to be considered. It is necessary that the rule of majority does not become ruled by majority in terms of religions, which means that whatever majority people are saying or doing, that should not reflect in all levels. For example, if we have minority group, religious groups, linguistic group, so they should be free in their own space. So for example, we have article 25 to 28. So they talk about religious freedom. Okay, article 29 and 30, it talked about cultural and educational rights. So they give maybe freedom to the minority groups. Yes, there are problems, and believe me, the problems are because of some maybe nutcracks, some fringe people. Majority people, more than 95% people are okay, they believe in this thing. Some nutcracks, some people who maybe idolize, or maybe they are attracted to extreme ideology, that is a problem. So in general, and if you find a problem, if you find that you are finding a problem with certain issue, just try to ask yourself, what should be the solution, what is the way forward? Because in a country such a huge as India, can we say that one view can be enforced entirely on others? That is not possible, and hence we have to accept diverse view, and we have to create solutions accordingly. Dignity and freedom to the citizens. Give respect, freedom, at least make sure that the weak section, disorderly caste, they are given equal status, they are given opportunity through reservation or through mechanism. A public expression should be allowed, where democracy, dissent, very important. You are against the government or you are pro the government, that is completely okay. Against the government is also important, because everybody cannot be pro government. Many a times, a lot of people believe that anti-government is a solution, because that will kind of put a check on the government. I believe in balance. I say that if government is doing well, praise the government. If government is not doing so well, question the government. Tomorrow you will be part of the government, so you have to be problem solver. So one of the important aspects of democracy is freedom, respect, dignity, right to express opinion, public opinion, because that puts a pressure on the government. That is a strong check and balance. In fact, this will ensure public opinion, and that is the way forward. Okay. Many individuals will believe that vote makes a difference the way government is run and to their own self-interest. So how many people believe? In India, almost 7% people believe that their vote makes a difference. So when you go and out, you believe that your vote makes a difference. It does. Your vote will ensure that the right people are chosen in the government. So that completes chapter number 2. Again, chapter number 2 is also inquiry, but it definitely talks about a lot of new things. Now let's talk about different countries face different kind of challenges. Challenge to democracy. So what are the challenges to democracy? Now this is what you expect in democracy. आप democracy में चाहते हो कि freedom हो, dignity हो, employment हो, development हो. You want that people should be respected, but there are certain challenges also, right? And let's understand what are the challenges. Now, challenges on the democracy have to be understood at various levels. The first is foundational challenge. Many countries in the world, if I talk about macro level, they are facing a problem that they are still they have transitioned to democracy, but they have not developed institutions. Second is many now there maybe they have been they are trying to bring non-democratic government. For example, in Myanmar, a very good example is Myanmar. So they are trying to move from a military government to a maybe they are saying democracy is there, but that is not full democracy. But they want military to keep away from controlling government, and they want to develop a sovereign and functional state. So many countries are still facing problem where they want to bring, or bring transition to democracy, and democratic institutions can be created. Now here, what is there? That is the first point. The second one, expansion of democracy. How do you expand democracy? What I mentioned, I said that democracy should not move around people. Democracy should be about processes. Democracy should be developing institutions. You might like a leader in the country, but that leader should also accept the transition institutions and should respect the institutions. So here there should be basic principle of democratic government, whether region, group, institutions. There should be greater power given to local bodies. In India, local bodies have not so much power. It varies from state to state. In Kerala, or for example, in West Bengal, or to an extent Gujarat, you will find that local government are more powerful. Similarly, in other states, they are not so powerful. Overall, we can say local governments have evolved and they are relatively more powerful than what they were in 90s or before than that. But we need better. So if you want to test a democracy, you want to see that not only the basic principles are followed, but how well it is leading to democratization. वो democracy कैसे नीचे जा रहा है? How it is reaching to the masses, to the people. Yesterday we discussed about the Panchayati Raj system. That is an example of local government. The second thing I will say that what is the power of Panchayati Raj? Does the Panchayati Raj have the power? So you live in a village. So what do you need? You need a road, maybe electricity supply. But what kind of a road? Electricity supply you want? Every village have a different requirement. So people at local level should have the power to decide what they want. You should have your say. There is a concept of principle of subsidiarity, which we'll study. And this principle of subsidiarity says that whatever is being managed, whatever can be managed best at whatever level, the power should be given at that level. For example, if that local body is given power to handle rural roads, maybe primary education, maybe street lights, so it should be handled from there. It should not be a work of a parliament, because that is not their domain. A parliament does not know what kind of problem every village is facing. People at local level, they understand the problem better. Hence, you have to devolve power to the local government. Principle of subsidiarity says that power should be devolved, because that is how the power will function properly on ground. So you have to ensure that A democracy can be expanded only, for example, in 73rd, 74th Amendment. We have to make it more stronger. Then only we can say that democracy is expanding. But ऐसा नहीं होता है. The reason is that people who have power, they don't want to give power. The people who control things, they don't want to give it. Let's take an, and that is a basic human nature. आप घर में रहते हो and you have a power at your home. You have power to carry on the remote. You, let's say you have a younger sister or younger brother, or and when you're sitting on the television, you want to watch your show, and your younger brother or younger sister comes in and says that I want to watch this TV. Now, can you give that TV remote to your brother, your sibling? Now you'd say, okay, I'll, so a common is, sir, I haven't seen the television, why should I give it? And the remote is in my hand, so power is in my hand, so I will decide. But you'd say, okay, I'm watching this show, let this show be over, then I'll give it to you. So that is probably shows a better picture of that you are more considerate to the demand of your sibling. But what if you take advantage of that situation? See, I'm elder, I'm bigger, so I will decide what will run in the TV, which happens mostly in the families. Okay, for example, in my family, I have a small, my son is almost 3.5 years, so he decides what runs in the TV. We practically have no control on our television sets. There's only cartoon running the entire day. The point I want to make here is, I would not say it is a democracy, but again, democracy means that you have to reconcile people, you have to give them power, you have to ensure that the democracy reaches. And democracy should start from family. Should start from family. Then it should go up to community. Then it should go up to maybe district level, then state level, and then national level. So it has to be inclusive. Extension of federal principle to all units of federation, inclusion of women, minority groups, इनका भी रोल होना चाहिए, सबका रोल होना चाहिए. So everybody falls under this challenge. So idea of democracy, the second problem is that we are able to expand democracy in a proper manner. Every country is facing some problem. What are the challenges to democracy in India? What kind of problem we face? Multiple problems. Anything, so we'll say all these things are anti-development. So we have problem of illiteracy, we have problem of criminals entering into politics, we have problem of corruption because basic services are not given, we have problem of regionalism. So certain people in a certain religious region, they tend to identify. We have problem of religious fundamentalism. We have problem of communalism. People are divided on religious line. We have problem of casteism. There's a problem of gender. So women are not given due respect. There's a problem of poverty. There's a problem of inequality. There's a problem of social inequality. There's a discrimination based on your caste. There is a political violence also. So we have so many problems in democracy with varying degrees. It's not that they are not resolved or they are always there. They are always there with varying degree. But one thing I can say here is that these problems will eventually resolve or will evolve with a period of time. A democracy should focus on ensuring that how these problems are resolved and how we are able to find a way out this problem. और उसके लिए we need strong institutions, we need development model which addresses this problem. India में अगर अच्छा economic development होगा, most of this problem will resolve. If we are more political conscious, we can choose the right people. If election commission is empowered, it can ensure that criminals do not enter in the politics. If we have strong institutions in place, the corruption will not happen, leakages will not happen. If we remove human element, that will not be there. If the development is addressed, the problem of regionalism might not also happen. If we use iron fist in handling religious fundamentalism, law and order, then this will not also happen. If you're able to understand or be able to control communal rights or the differences between communities, communalism will not happen. If you are able to ensure that people from different caste groups, social groups are not discriminated based on the basis of caste, and if people who are discriminated, the people who are the perpetrators of the crime are put behind bar. If you are able to ensure that women get their due right, whether they are homemakers or whether they are doing the job at maybe in a company or factory, there should be wage parity. There should not be any kind of exploitation at workplace. If you are able to reach out to the poor, give them food security, give them an opportunity, then poverty will not be there. If you are able to give these poor people resource or access to a resource, where the inequality will come down. Similarly, social and economic inequality interlinked. If we are able to address one, other can also be there. But many a times social inequality will require social change. Okay, so these are democracy, and these can be attained or can be reached out only if we have a strong government who addresses or understands these problems. So every country faces these problems. So we have to focus institutions, we have to focus on practices, we have to understand what democracy is. You are a citizen of this country. We want to develop citizen consciousness, common citizen consciousness, a common citizenship consciousness of what? Our rights, our duties, our practices. So COVID is going on. You have to be sincere. You have to take care of your health. You have to take care of health. You have to ensure that when you go out, you take all precautions. You don't spit around. Government has to put a fine. But why there is a need of fine? Because a lot of people are not following all these things. What you need to understand your rights as well. You need to understand your duties. Again, these duties are not legal duties, they are moral duties. Your practices, how you conduct yourself. So this is what we expect from people. So democracy is about people, and the democracy, the institutions can develop only when people are conscious of these things. Okay, so we have to bring down the control influence of rich and powerful people in making government decision. If government में decision जो है वो, it should be driven by rule of law. It should be driven by what looks good and what should be there. Again वो decision ऐसा नहीं कि perfect होगा, government decision गलत भी हो सकता है. But if decision are taken to reach out to help or maybe certain people, business groups, so we can say it is not a capitalism. We say it is a crony capitalism. So we do not want this to happen. We have to find a solution to these problems. Okay, so let's see this cartoon. So this Hosni Mubarak re-elected because there's a rigging of election. You can see democracy. That is how democracy is happening. So you have gender equality, but in a political party or in a party, you talk about women agenda, but there are hardly people in the political party where women are given representation. The money decides who will win the president election in USA. The lobby group will decide who wins election, because you have a lobby group and you are spending money for the election. So tomorrow you want a favor in return. Okay. So we have different situation, different context, different situation. So there's a ringing somewhere. There's one single party. There's practically no democracy. There are military dictatorship is there. There is sectarian violence and democracy is not able to happen. There is a right, reconciling black and white rights. So-called the biggest democracy of the world, where there are so many liberal principles, they themselves are not, following international law. Women are not given respect. There's no freedom of religion for minorities. Okay, in Saudi Arabia. So these are there. So these are challenges in different contexts, different countries. What is the way forward? How do we address these? And the way forward is political reform. We have to bring reforms. We have to reform democracy reforms. We have to bring political reforms. For example, in India, we have to take measures to ensure the politicians do not enter into, or people from politicians from criminal background are not entering into the politics. People with criminal records, property affidavits, so everything has to be open now. So when you go and contest election, you have to put your source of income, any kind of criminal cases, if there are any pending. So give all the information. If you give a wrong information, your membership might be cancelled. So Supreme Court has given decision here, disqualification of convicted legislature in 2013. So decriminalization of politics is a way forward where clean people enter into the politics, and that sets the base. Electoral bonds were brought in. Electoral bonds ensured that the clean money is entered. Though it's other thing that name. One problem is this: the name is not mentioned, so anonymous is there. The electoral bond जो देता है वो उसका नाम नहीं आता है. So, but electoral bonds ensure that the clean money will come in the system. Effective state to minimize the role of black money in elections, thereby keeping a check on the criminalization of politics. Again, electoral bonds भी अपने कुछ उनके problems हैं. For example, here up to donation जो है 2000 हो सकता है. अब ऐसा नहीं कि 1 crore आप डोनेशन दे रहे हो and you are anonymous. That is not possible. We have a measure called nota. जब आप वोट देने जाते हो on EVM, so there are party 1, party 2, सबके साइन बने, and there is a nota. None of the above. So you can put nota. Nota will not decide the outcome of the election, but nota will decide that people are not unhappy. So nota is basically that people register a vote and they reject everybody in the election जो fight हो रहा है. So that nota is somewhere giving an opinion. When more people are using nota, that means there is a question mark on the ability of the politicians in handling the problems. Okay, so we have to find, the reforms, we have to find mechanism where these things are there. Okay, so these are some very good questions. In fact, you can read these chapters in detail and they will be able to give you deep insight. ये जो 10th की NCERT बहुत अच्छी है. It is very good book. It is the things are covered in a proper structured manner, and here I would expect you to go through them, read them, and I want you to write answers also. मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप answers देना. Some people have submitted their answers, they are submitting, but answer writing should be regular. And one more thing, when you write answers, I want the language आपका जो होना चाहिए आंसर का वो अच्छा होना चाहिए. And for that you have to work hard. Uh, Imagine a situation how your answer should look. जो किताब में लिखा हुआ है, can you replicate that language? If not, maybe 1 or 2 level, can you write, like 5 class or 5th or 6th class NCERT books में जैसा लिखा हुआ है? You don't have to write a flowery language, but you have to write in a very basic manner. Okay, so that is what I expect. Read these 3 chapters. The 10th NCERT is really good. The Indian polity, they'll give you deep insight towards, the inquiry part, the inquisitiveness part will be answered. And these inquiry and inquisitiveness is very important in answer writing, in developing a thought process. So this NCERT is very good. In fact, class 11th NCERT is also very good, because if you read the NCERTs properly, you'll be able to handle questions which are conceptual questions in prelims. One more thing, a few students messaged me and said, sir, when we are when with the daily questions and newspaper that we are getting, we are not able to handle them. Now NCERTs are base developing or base building. So NCERT आप करके आप UPSC क्वेश्चन नहीं निकाल पाओगे. It will take some time, because NCERT is just helping you develop your base. For example, if I talk about economics, so we have covered economics 9th and 10th class NCERT. But if you want to attempt questions of economics, you have to attend, on the prelims or mains examination, you have to go one step beyond the basics. तभी क्वेश्चन निकलेगा, because questions are very contemporary, questions are linked with current, and many times maybe little more information is needed than what is mentioned in the NCERT. Okay, so one more thing guys, I'll be starting economics module apart from the NCERT जो चल रहा है 5 days a week. I'll be starting economics module on Saturday and Sunday, and from this Saturday I'll be starting, so it will start from scratch. This economics module is for for my students, offline students who have who were supposed to give prelims, and this module was remaining in one of the batches. So there are 5 batches in offline. So in one of the batches, economics module पूरा हुआ नहीं था. So I'm going to start this module, but this class will be only on Saturday, Sunday. So students who want to attend, they can attend these lectures apart from the regular NCERTs. But these will be advanced classes of economics, and you can attend them. But after attending these classes, you can attempt previous year questions easily, prelims as well as mains. And there will be more than some 12-13 lectures. So it will go on for almost 5-6 weeks. 6 weeks तक जाएगा. And these lectures will be bigger. Unlike ये 2.5 hour के lectures होंगे. Okay. So on Saturday, Sunday, I'll be starting these lectures, and the timing will be 10:30 to 1. So people who do not have a schedule, they can go, and I'll be starting from scratch. Remember, means I will starting from scratch. But students who want to attend, they should be thorough with class 9th and class 10th NCERT. Then only they'll be able to read, understand the topics. ठीक है ना? So that is all. So I would expect, अगर आपको क्वेश्चन निकालने हैं, थोड़ा एक NCERT से एक लेवल ऊपर जाना पड़ेगा. And as far as newspaper reading is concerned, the filtering has to be developed, and for that it will take some time. अभी के लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं is that only read editorials, and you can also do one thing is that अभी तो न्यूज भी ज्यादा नहीं आ रहा है, maybe just few news are coming, maybe things will change in coming days, but editorials आपको पढ़ सकते हो अभी के लिए फिलहाल. And once the regular news is there, then you can push little extra effort, जिसमें आप जो है editorials के अलावा जो करंट इश्यूज है, इंटरनेशनल इश्यूज है, वो भी आप पढ़ना शुरू कर सकते हो. बट इट विल टेक सम टाइम. ठीक है, एटलीस्ट इट विल टेक सम एटलीस्ट 2 months ऑफ रेगुलर एफर्ट. जब आप रेगुलर कर लोगे तब आपका न्यूज़पेपर में आपका जो है कंफर्ट डेवलप होना स्टार्ट होगा. डे 1 से नहीं होगा बेटा. ठीक है ना. सो कुछ तो थोड़ा स्लो प्रोसेस चलता है यहाँ पे. रीड करिए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल वंस माई इकोनॉमिक्स से लेक्चर पढ़ोगे कर लोगे तो इकोनॉमिक्स वाले इश्यूज रिजॉल्व हो जाएंगे. आफ्टर 9th and 11th के जो एनसीईआरटी हमने जब पॉलिटी का कर लेंगे तो पॉलिटी एंड गवर्नेंस वाले टॉपिक्स आपको इजी समझ में आएंगे. पॉलिटी एंड गवर्नेंस, सो इकोनॉमिक्स, पॉलिटी एंड गवर्नेंस अगर आप कर लोगे तो मेजॉरिटीली यू विल अंडरस्टैंड. ओके, so that is all guys for today. ठीक है, thank you very much for time and patience. So tomorrow is current affair. Classes will take, Neeraj sir will take, and we'll be meeting on Thursday. ठीक है, चलो, take care.